For decades, the term conspiracy theorist was used to dismiss anyone who suggested that the government was operating in the shadows. It was a label designed to signal that a person was disconnected from reality. But in the mid-1970s, the world received a collective jolt of electricity. Documents started leaking, whistleblowers began to speak, and congressional committees were forced to investigate things that sounded like the plots of pulp spy novels. It turned out that the paranoid were often the most well-informed. But what happens when the theories are proven true? Today, we are looking at the moments when the shadow government stepped into the light. After the devastation of World War II, Europe was a continent divided by an iron curtain. While the public focused on reconstruction, a secret infrastructure was being built beneath their feet. This was Operation Gladio, a network of stay-behind armies organized by NATO and the CIA. The official mission was simple. If the Soviet Union ever invaded Western Europe, these secret cells would remain behind the lines to conduct sabotage and resistance. They were equipped with hidden caches of explosives, high-tech communications, and millions of dollars in untraceable funds. For years, the very existence of these groups was a closely guarded secret, known only to a handful of high-ranking officials and the operatives themselves. It sounds like a paranoid fantasy, but it was a cold, hard administrative reality. However, the mission eventually began to shift. Instead of preparing for a Soviet invasion that never came, these secret armies started looking inward. They began to view their own citizens, specifically those with leftist political leanings, as the real enemy. And this led to a dark period of European history known as the strategy of tension. But how did a defensive network turn into a tool for domestic terror? In the 1960s and 70s, Italy was rocked by a series of horrific bombings and assassinations. For a long time, the public was told that these were the works of radical left-wing terrorists. It was a terrifying time. People were afraid to go to the bank or ride the train. But decades later, the truth emerged through court testimonies and declassified files. Many of these attacks were actually carried out, or at least facilitated, by the secret Gladio networks and members of the Italian intelligence services. This was the strategy of tension, a deliberate attempt to create so much chaos and fear that the public would beg for more authoritarian control and reject the Communist Party at the ballot box. One of the most shocking revelations came from Vincenzo Vinciguerra, a neo-fascist operative who admitted to a 1972 car bombing. He testified that he was protected by a vast network of secret services that shared his ideological goals. It was a shadow government in the most literal sense, a state within a state, working against the democratic will of the people. And yet, while Europe was grappling with these hidden armies, an even larger shadow war was being waged on the other side of the planet. During the Vietnam War, the United States was officially committed to the neutrality of Laos, as established by the 1962 Geneva Accords. That was the public story. The reality was that Laos was becoming the most heavily bombed country in history. This was the secret war, an operation so clandestine that most members of Congress didn't even know it was happening. To maintain deniability, the CIA operated through a front company called Air America. On the surface, it was a civilian charter airline. In reality, it was the largest paramilitary airline in the world, transporting troops, weapons, and supplies to a secret army of over 30,000 Hmong tribesmen. For over a decade, the executive branch bypassed the constitutional requirement for a declaration of war. They funded the operation through black budgets and laundered money, creating a parallel military structure that existed entirely outside the law. This wasn't just a small skirmish. It was a multi-billion-dollar conflict involving thousands of sorties and millions of tons of ordnance. But as the war dragged on, the methods became even more brutal. And the question remains, who was truly in control of this invisible machine? If the war in Laos was the Shadow's logistical masterpiece, the Phoenix program was its darkest psychological expression. Launched in the late 1960s, Its goal was to identify and neutralize the Viet Cong infrastructure through assassination, kidnapping, and interrogation. It was a program designed to be efficient, and it was devastatingly effective. According to official statistics, over 20,000 people were killed under the Phoenix umbrella. The problem, as later revealed by whistleblowers and investigators, was that the program had almost no oversight. Local officials often used the program to settle personal vendettas, labeling anyone they disliked as a communist sympathizer. Many of the neutralizations were carried out without a shred of evidence. It was a system where the intelligence agency acted as the investigator, the judge, and the executioner, all at once. When the program was eventually exposed, it shocked the American conscience. It proved that in the pursuit of national security, the state was capable of operating with the cold-blooded precision of the very enemies it claimed to be fighting. But could the system ever be fixed? Or was the shadow already too deeply embedded in the halls of power? The year 1975 was a moment of reckoning. Following the Watergate scandal, the American public's trust in government was at an all-time low. Rumors of CIA involvement in foreign assassinations and domestic spying were reaching a fever pitch. In response, the Senate formed a special committee led by Frank Church of Idaho. What they found was more explosive than anyone had imagined. They uncovered the family jewels, a massive internal report detailing decades of illegal activities. We're talking about MK-Ultra, a secret project to develop mind control techniques using LSD on unwitting subjects. We're talking about COINTELPRO, an FBI program designed to infiltrate and destroy domestic political groups, including the civil rights movement. The committee revealed that the intelligence agencies had been intercepting millions of telegrams and monitoring the mail of American citizens for years. These weren't just the theories of the fringe, they were documented programs with signatures and budget codes. Senator Church famously warned that the capability of these agencies could be turned on the American people at any moment, and that there would be no place to hide. But was this a genuine cleansing of the system? Or was it just a temporary retreat into the shadows before a new era of secrecy began? During the investigations, Senator Church used a phrase that would echo through history. He called the CIA a rogue elephant that was rampaging out of control. The agencies, however, pushed back. They argued that they were always acting on the implied orders of the president. This was the birth of plausible deniability, a system where the commander-in-chief could order something to be done, while leaving no paper trail that could ever link them to the crime. This created a dangerous vacuum of responsibility. If the president didn't technically order an assassination, and the agency didn't technically report it, did it actually happen in the eyes of the law? This disconnect allowed a permanent bureaucracy of intelligence and military officials to develop their own foreign policy, one that often ran counter to the public platform of the elected administration. It was a realization that the people we vote for are often just a facade for a much more stable and much more secretive power structure. So, if the elected officials aren't in total control, then who is? And more importantly, how do we hold them accountable? The light of day didn't just happen. It was forced into existence by individuals who decided that their oath to the Constitution was more important than their oath of secrecy. Men like Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers and proved the government had been lying about the Vietnam War for years. Or Frank Snepp, a CIA analyst who was sued by his own government for publishing a book about the fall of Saigon without permission. These people weren't just theorists. They were insiders who had seen the machinery of the shadow government firsthand. The state's reaction to these leaks was almost always the same: aggressive prosecution and character assassination. The message was clear: the truth is a threat to national security. Even when the revelations proved that the government had broken the law, it was the whistleblowers, not the lawbreakers, who often faced the most severe consequences. This dynamic created a chilling effect that still exists today. It makes us wonder, how many more secret wars or Gladio networks are currently operating, simply because the people inside are too afraid to speak? The price of truth is high, but the price of silence is the slow death of democracy. The revelations of the 1970s didn't end the shadow government. They simply forced it to evolve. New laws were passed, like the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, but these eventually led to secret courts and even more complex layers of classification. The shadow didn't disappear. It just became more legalistic. However, the most significant change was in us. We no longer look at the world with the same wide-eyed innocence that people had in the 1950s. We know now that denials from officials are often just a part of the script. We know that the line between conspiracy and history is often just a matter of which documents have been declassified this year. This skepticism is the permanent legacy of Gladio, the Secret War, and the Phoenix program. It is a heavy burden to carry, but it is also our only defense. History has shown us that the price of a free society is constant vigilance against those who believe they are above the law. So the next time you hear a story that sounds too wild to be true, remember the rogue elephant. Because in the end, the greatest conspiracy was the one that happened right in front of our eyes. Thank you for exploring these dark corners of history with us today. If you found this investigation into the shadow government compelling, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. It helps us continue to bring these hidden stories to light. What other historical mysteries do you think deserve a closer look? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and always look for the truth behind the curtain.